creative segmentation is a way in which businesses can gain a strategic advantage over their competitors. Okay. And we're in this. We're talking about niche. We're talking about segmentation. We're talking about positioning. Is that when you divide a market, you can use sort of traditional ways in which to divide the market. Maybe you looked at age or gender or education or geography or something like that. But creative segmentation often has a multivariate component where you look at age and gender and social economic position as well as geography all together to come up with a niche that is different than some of your competitors, and then creating products and services for that niche that you've created in this sort of multivariate sort of way. Okay. For example here, you should tailor your segmentation based on your strategic decision. Do you want to reduce your customer defection? Do you want to extend a brand? Whatever it is, that should have an impact on how you segment or divide your market. Or, for example, again, keep in mind we're talking about creative segmentation, that you could segment or niche based on customers' actual purchasing behavior. You create products and services based on heaviness of use, or product or service for people who switch brands a lot, or create a product based on people's likely behavior. Or you can define segments based upon market condition changes and those sorts of things. And again, this is just a quick review, so I'm not going to spend much time on this, but here are a sample of some of the selection criteria that you might use in terms of determining your niche strategy, or determining which niche are you going to go after first. And it could be based on the size. It could be based on profitability. It could be based on how easy it is to enter. It could be based on accessibility. It could be based on what are you going to learn in that particular niche. So why we enter certain niches vary. The reason why. Okay. But we need to have a reason. We just don't enter a niche because. We enter a niche because we have some sort of objective or goal that we establish in the beginning, and then we try to meet. Okay. So niche analysis is simply these things: classifying your customers' needs, targeting those customers. Okay. Segmenting the market based upon segment or niche, understanding why you're picking that particular niche, and which niche and why you're going to enter. That's customer analysis in brief. So let's get back to the strategic management decision making. So step 3 is about assessing the company's strengths and weaknesses. You need to reflect in the company to understand what is the company good at and what the company may not be good at. If the company can't be good at everything, and shouldn't try to be. Okay, we can partner with others that are better at certain things than we are. Okay, just as companies that are weaker in other things, we can partner with them. But it's important for us to understand what our strengths and weaknesses are moving forward. Now, if we move externally, we need to understand what threats, opportunities, and trends exist out there. Just as strengths and weaknesses tend to be internal, opportunities and threats tend to be external. I can tell you this, that most companies spend most of their time looking at threats, negative external factors, things that can hurt the company, whether it be competitors or economic conditions. The companies that I want you to focus on is not to not pay any attention to threats, but to understand that it's the opportunities that drive the firm. It's the successful pursuit of opportunity that's going to really increase the value of the firm. It's the successful pursuit of opportunities that's going to grow the firm. And then what sort of trends out there? What trends can we that we can piggyback on? What trends are kind of counter to our goals and expectations? Okay. It's important to understand these external things as well as the internal strengths and weaknesses that we just discussed. Step 5. Identify the key success factors. In any sort of industry, there are a number of things that the company needs to do in order to be successful. Now, I'm not talking about going crazy. I'm talking about a handful of things, 5 to 7 things. We must have good customer service and good customer aftercare. That might be something that's very important in certain businesses. In other businesses, it might be educating the customer on how to use the product or service. Whatever they are, we need to understand what those key success factors are. Okay? We need to understand what those are. And then we need to make sure that we can meet the expectations or exceed the expectations of our customers with respect to those key success factors. Now we move to analyzing the customer. Okay, by doing this, it allows the entrepreneur to avoid surprises, okay, identify potentially new competitors and threats, improve reaction time to competitors' moves and actions, and perhaps even anticipate our competitors or our rivals' next strategic moves. So it's important for us to understand what's going on in the competitive environment. But again, I don't want you to be obsessed with the competitor. It's important for you to be obsessed with the customer. Because just because the competitor is doing something, that doesn't mean that it's something that we should do. Just because we think our competitors are successful, that doesn't mean that we can't be more successful by focusing our attention on the customer. So we need to be aware of what the competitors are up to. We need to be aware of all of that stuff, no question about it. Okay? But keep it in context. Keep it in context. These are just a number of techniques that we can use to gain basically the same thing that we were talking about before, competitive intelligence, monitoring trade publications, talking to customers and suppliers, listening to employees, especially sales reps and purchasing agents, attending trade shows and conferences, studying competitors' literature. What are they saying? What are they pushing? Getting customer credit reports, local library, okay, the internet. Okay. We can look at who are they hiring. We can look at what patents are they filing. All of these things will give us some insight on the behavior of the firm. Many of these things are very good ways to get an understanding of what's going on with the competitors because we're looking at their behavior as opposed to what they just say. The CEO can say anything or the company can say anything in their own marketing literature. But what patents are they filing? Who are they hiring? Those sorts of issues. We can kind of have an X-ray view on what the company is actually doing. Step 7, creating company goals and objectives. Goals are broad, long-term attributes that we want to accomplish. And objectives are a little bit more detailed, specific targets that are smart. And when we say smart, we're saying specific, measurable, obtainable, realistic, and timely. Specific, measurable, obtainable, realistic, and timely. Okay. When we talk about realistic, there are some advantages to having goals that are really, really big, that stretch us, that are very challenging. Okay. but they need to be reasonable in some respects, because if they are just so out there, then that potentially can be demotivating as well. Okay. What makes a good goal? Well, it certainly needs to be written in terms of outcome rather than action. It needs to be measurable, quantifiable. It needs to be clear in terms of time frame. As I said, challenging yet obtainable. It needs to be written down, and it needs to be communicated to all organizational members. Very simple. Step 8. Strategy is this roadmap on how. A strategy is a roadmap that's used to guide the company. Okay? Strategy is the game plan, as we said, for winning. So we need to then formulate it. And business model is related to strategy. So a good strategy emanates and is intertwined with a good, strong business model. We're going to talk about business models in another lecture, but keep in mind strategy and business model are interrelated. Here are a few strategic options we might have. If we divide the customer space into broad industry and niche versus low cost or differentiation, you see that we have a differentiation strategy that is one that is focused on a more industry-wide basis. We have low-cost strategy, which is a strategy that is also can be industry-wide. We have excuse me, a differentiation focus, which is where we go to a particular niche and we create a product or service that's highly differentiated. Or we are in a niche where we're low-cost focused. Now again, for our purposes in a new venture, we are more likely to be in differentiation focus or cost focus. But keep in mind, cost and price are not the same thing. Cost and price are not the same thing. Cost is what we incur, prices are what the customers pay. So we're not talking about a strategy that's based on price, we're basing a strategy that is based on our ability to push down cost. Differentiation is a way in which we can create value for our customers. It's a way in which we can create loyalty. It's a way in which we can position our product or service as being unique in the marketplace. It's a way in which we can demonstrate that our product is special. That means something different to the customer. Okay. Now the key is building differentiation on something that is distinctive, okay, but it's in a way in which customers value. It's not just different for different sake, but it's different in a way that customers value. Many people, many companies fall in the trap of creating something different, and they think they're going to be successful just because it's different. But it's not because it's just different. It has to be different in a way that customers value. Focus, again, has to do with concentrating on a customer segment or a particular niche, or focusing on a particular need, interest, want that a set of customers may have. Okay. It's very costly to focus or try to serve an entire market, especially in a startup situation. So, it's how do you eat an elephant? And that's, one bite at a time. So we start small, we start in a particular niche. Cost leadership, and I said I would mention this before. Again, cost leadership or low-cost producer is about using investment, using technology, using your brain power to continue to push down the cost to produce your product or service. Okay? if you're the cost leader in the market, okay, you have an advantage because you can reach people who actually do buy on the base of price. Okay? If you're cost leader, you have the power to set the industry price floor because no one really can price below you and maintain profitability. And this cost leadership strategy works well when buyers are sensitive to price change, okay? When competing firms are selling the same commodity product, okay? Or when companies can benefit from economies of scale. Okay? Otherwise, a more focus or differentiation strategy is probably best. It is rare that a small startup has cost leadership position because it's often tied to significant technology investments, significant capital investments, and economies of scale. 9. Translate the strategies into an action plan. Okay. You need to create projects that can be defined by purpose, by scope, by contribution, by resource requirement, and timing. Okay. Translating these strategies into action plans are actually oftentimes the role of middle management. Taking the strategy that's created by the executives and breaking it into actionable plans is something that middle management tends to do. And then finally here is establish accurate controls. It's a plan to establish standards against which actual performance is measured. How do we know if we've met our goals? How do we know if we met our objectives if we don't have a way to measure them and something to measure against? So entrepreneurs must identify and track key performance indicators. And then they need to take creative and corrective action. Okay? And this is the key. This is an iterative process. An iterative process. Okay, so let's take a quick break here before we start talking about barriers to entry.